Welcome, everybody, to another exciting edition of Omnibros Live here on the Omnibus Collectors Network. It's a special night. It's comic book talk on a Thursday. It's pretty weird because I'm not usually here on Thursdays when that happens, but pretty interesting. Welcome, everybody. We're joined tonight by these two wonderful peeps. Omnibus Collector. Riley, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. And Comics Guide. Lou, how you doing?
Hey man, I am doing well. It's another wonderful Thursday afternoon. It's almost Friday, so I can't complain.
You've seen me all week, Lou.
I know.
We're on Monday, Wednesday, and now Thursday.
I know, and I'm not tired of seeing you, Gio.
All right. So tonight, I'm not technically participating. I just wanted to be on here for the hell of it. Unfortunately, Jess is out sick. They'll be back next week, hopefully on Monday. So we have a comic book talk episode, and these guys are going to take that panel with you guys. And I'm here to plug our wonderful sponsor. That is, of course, InStockTrades.com, making all the dreams come true for all you collected edition nerds. If you want your omnibus, hardcover, trade paperback, manga, whatever it may be when it comes to collected editions, you got to check out InStockTrades.com. Up to 50% off. Loyalty discount stack on an extra 2% of that. If you order $50 or more in your collected editions order, you get free shipping. Fantastic customer service and wonderful packaging at InStockTrades.com, the official sponsor of Omnibros Live on the Omnibus Collectors Network. There you go.
No mouth harp tonight, unfortunately.
No,
Just
I don't
imagine
remember.
it in your mind.
So just boing, 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 boing.
Yeah.
There we go. So yeah, the topic tonight, I kind of thought up earlier when I was watching the new episode of Peacemaker this morning, is basically about when we see comics change things about their characters and about the world of the comics and stuff, to have synergy with the adaptations, like TV and movie adaptations and stuff, and like what the consensus is on like times that it happened that it was good, times that it happened that it was bad, and like where we would be fine with it. And this is really because Peacemaker and Vigilante, like the characters that exist in the Peacemaker show that are existing DC Comics characters, are very far different from their original counterparts. So it begs the question to me, because I'm thinking like you're someone who's not familiar with comics. You haven't really dived into reading comics, or maybe you've only read a couple. And you're watching Peacemaker and you're like, man, like the season ends, because next week is the last one for the season, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
So the season ends and you want more of this guy, and you try to look into it and you see that there's some Peacemaker comics out there, but you read them and he's a complete 180 heel turn from John Cena's version of the character. Like that's kind of jarring, right? Like,
yeah. We've seen that mostly with, I would say we've seen it mostly with James Gunn, because James Gunn will take these obscure characters, and it's not that he doesn't read it or respect the source material. He does. He seems like he's that type of guy, and he knows his shit. But he understands that he has to change the characters, and in some ways, he completely does a 180 on certain characters, and he makes them more likable. A great example of this is Star-Lord. If you read those Annihilation books, Annihilation Conquest, and you're looking for the Star-Lord Chris Pratt, that is not him. It doesn't even look like him. This iteration of Star-Lord came much later. So what we're seeing is that, and it's specifically mostly James Gunn, all these characters that James Gunn comes in contact with, they do a 180 and they become instantly likable and popular.
Now, in the case of like the characters from Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot of them did already have like some level of popularity with comic book readers, but they weren't like headlining characters. like the Guardians of the Galaxy during that era of like the, you know, Annihilation Conquest and War of Kings and whatnot, that's where that new team was formed, and tons of people enjoyed that comic, and like that cult following that that comic had really lent towards them wanting to use that team again in the movies. But it is very true that like the characters as they are in the movies are pretty far different from the comic counterparts, and eventually those stories started to adjust the characters to be more like their comic counterparts. And in the cases of characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy, where they did have a pretty decent following, I think that that initial run where that happened, which was Bendis's run,
Yeah.
people were pretty upset about that. But like, if it's a character like in Peacemaker, where like Peacemaker himself has existed for a long while, but like has never had very much spotlight. He's never been a character that's very much utilized.
Right.
And it's, I think like it was smart for Gunn to utilize him as a primary character in his stuff, because it's almost like having a clean slate. And for
Yeah.
something like that, like it might not be so jarring for readers to see that character morph a little bit to be more like the TV counterpart. But they did that. I haven't read it, but they did a recent like Garth Ennis one shot with him that apparently was more in line with like Ennis's Punisher Max, so like more serious, violent type stuff,
Yeah.
rather than being, you know, what people thought they would get from enjoying the show. But I don't know, like when is it okay for these synergies to be like, for characters to be changed to match the adaptation, and when should maybe the adaptation just not be doing those things?
Well, I think for the most part you hit the nail on the head, because I think the key thing to this is that the character has to be really obscure, where nobody gives
Yeah.
it, because I don't care who you are. If you come up to me and tell me your favorite supervillain was Peacemaker before James Gunn and the Suicide Squad, I'd call bullshit. I'm like, come on, really, Peacemaker? Peacemaker wasn't even a D-list villain. He was bottom of the barrel as far as villains go, and I I gotta be honest. When they first announced we're doing a Peacemaker show,
Mhm.
I thought, how the fuck is this gonna work? Because he's arguably the most unlikable character in the Suicide Squad movie, despite the fact that he's fun and he's hilarious. He's kind of unlikable because he's a dick. He ends up killing Flag in that Suicide Squad movie, arguably one of the most popular characters. They drop a building on him, and I'll be fucking damned if James Gunn didn't say, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know exactly how I'm gonna make him. I'm gonna make him likable. I'm gonna make his dad a racist." So I know we're kind of spoiling the show. I'm gonna make his dad a racist, and I'm gonna make him have such a fucking tragic backstory. And on top of that, I'm gonna give him probably the best pet sidekick we've seen. I have never seen an eagle hug a grown man before, but now I can die happily because I've seen that. I love that shit.
I think I'm thinking on the other characters that he uses, and like, you know, mentioning his dad, White Dragon is another character that's, you know, not
Yep.
that well known in the comics. He's been around for a while. He's got several iterations. I was just looking, like Augie is not a comic version of that character, but the one that he's based off of is William Heller, that was in Suicide Squad, you know, from one of the which was this? This is Ostrander,
Yeah.
Volume 3, not the classic one. Um, he appears in there. He does stuff in there, but like that's a character that. But on it, I'm going to be completely honest. Before seeing the show, I was like, White Dragon, and then I like saw a picture of the comics, and I was like, that is a comic character, isn't it? Like I had to really look at that and think about that for a second. But and he's, you know, he is also racist, the character in the comics and stuff. So
Yeah.
but they, you know, they give him a new name, they give him a new story. He's connected to Peacemaker, like, and it's something that works for the context of the show, and it works in a way that like Gunn is taking elements. He's kind of picking and choosing what he wants and thinks is, I guess, going to work best for the context of his story. But it's like, if this character was, if it was Batman and he completely changed so much about it, that wouldn't work. And I think like a character that big, like obviously Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are A-listers. Like if you were to do something like this and completely shift, that doesn't work because of the fact that like there's a consciousness of like everyone, a common shared consciousness about what those characters are and what makes them. So if you were to make huge shifts to them, it just wouldn't work. But when you find something that's like, you know, Judo Master, he can do whatever he wants with him because only a, you know, I'm sure some of our viewers are like, I love Judo Master. But like he's not a character that's an everyday name.
Well, look what. Okay, so here's a good example of Pa Kent, super beloved character, right? One of the most loved father figures in all of comics. Zack Snyder kind of changed him up, and I think he went a little too far with it. And I know that Snyder fans, I know you're out there. There's that one scene for me where Clark is asking him, "Do you think I should have let them drown?" And Pa Kent goes, "Maybe." And that just took me out. I'm like, that's not a Pa Kent thing. Pa Kent would just not. I get that. I guess Snyder was going for a super grounded take. And I get that from a father perspective, I could see that father being conflicted of, look, I've got the son with all these abilities and stuff like that. But that to me just did not ring true to who Pa Kent is as a character. And I think that's a good example of you're taking the character and you're changing them and not necessarily for the better.
Yeah. So in one of the cases that I think like, because then oftentimes comics will adjust those characters, and if I think that if they were to use Peacemaker and try to make him more similar to the character from the comics, they'd probably have success in doing so, or more make him more like the character in the show in the comics. The comics would have more success and newer readers would have somewhere to go. I think that that could possibly be a win-win. But like there are so many cases where it happens and it's not received well, and a lot of times like it's very clunky. And one of the times that they tried to make synergy between the source to make it more like the adaptation, that I think like ultimately it was okay, but the way it was executed was just so clumsily done, was when they introduced the new Nick Fury in the Marvel comics.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it was like it seemed so forced.
That was a convoluted mess.
Yeah, like there's so many, because I have no issue with them having, tried to bring in a new Nick Fury or a different Nick Fury to make him more like the version that we see on screen. But there are so many better ways that that could have happened. Because obviously, Ultimate Nick Fury was directly based on Sam Jackson. And a couple years after they introduced Nick Fury Jr., the like Ultimate Universe folded into 616 anyway. Right. So if they had just like either shifted one thing up or shifted one thing down a little bit, like they could have just integrated Ultimate Nick Fury and had Hasselhoff Nick Fury go off and do his own thing somewhere.
Oh my god, I love that.
That's what Sam Jackson calls him, is Hasselhoff Fury.
Really?
When I was in LA, he has a box. He has a pool box at Golden Apple in LA. And I was talking to the owner and he was like, yeah, he doesn't read anything from DC. He loves reading anything with him in it at Marvel. And I was like, with him in it? And he goes, yeah, anything with Nick Fury. And then he stopped and I was about to ask, like, only Black Nick Fury? And he goes, no Hasselhoff Fury. And I laughed, and he's like, that's what he calls him. He calls White Nick Fury Hasselhoff Fury. I was like, all right, fair enough. Anyway, though, like,
That's awesome.
That was so poorly handled, because it was like the fallout of Fear itself, which was already not like the most well received event, and they introduced Marcus Johnson, I think was his name, completely like, doing his own thing, and then like throughout his story he changes into the appearance of Ultimate Nick Fury, basically. Like, he shaves his head, he loses an eye, and then eventually, like, when he finds out that Nick's his dad, or like they tell the audience that Nick Fury is his dad, he changes his name to Nick Fury Jr. And I'm like, what?
That was one of those things that, yeah, that to me just ranks. That was so fucking clumsy the way they did that. I mean, for me, it's whatever. Okay, they got to the Nick Fury that we know and love from the films and the comic book universe.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't bother me at all. But how they got there, I was like, oh, that's really clunky.
Yeah. Because once they got there, like, the character was fine. He was written very well, like in anything he appeared in. But it was like the way that we got there. You might as well have just said, like, "Hey guys, here's and just dropped him on us." Like, that's equivalent to how well that was handled.
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so here's one. I think one character that they took and they successfully really did a good change up on them is female Thor. I really like what they did with that. And I think it was Jason Aaron, and I think he knocked it out of the park for the most part. Because there's this whole mystery of who's female Thor. Wow, who's this character? And even though I think for the most part a lot of people sussed it out pretty early on. It's like, oh, it's gonna be this person. And then you realize the state that character is in, where they have cancer and they're dying, and every time they transform into female Thor, it speeds up the process of the cancer. So there's that added little thing to it. And you're taking a character that, for the most part, has had years of history where all that character has been was just the femme foil, or the character where Thor is lusting after her, or Thor really loves her, and the relationship character where they really haven't done much, and they're changing that up, and they're giving that character some gravitas and actually making the character really cool and important. That is an example of, I think they nailed it in changing who that character is and making them better. There was another example. Jason Latour did the same thing with Spider-Gwen. We've seen various iterations of that character through years and years and years. And for the most part, the character has stayed the same. We know Gwen Stacy, she ended up dying. And we also had the version of Gwen Stacy in the Ultimate Universe that turned into Carnage and all this other stuff, and that was a mess. And then we get Jason Latour, who says, you know what? We have a Spider-Verse. Let's see what would happen if Gwen Stacy is the one that gets bit and we get Spider-Gwen out of it. Arguably one of the most popular iterations of the character, and arguably one of the most popular reworkings of the character that's been done in the last 10 years. Spider-Gwen is everywhere. Kids are cosplaying it. She was in Into the Spider-Verse. She's getting a spin-off movie along with Silk and the other characters. So it works. It can be done well, and I think we've seen several iterations over the last few years that it does do a good job.
This is another example for Marvel where they changed the character to make them more like the film counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
That worked very well. The way that they did it was the evolution, more or less, of Loki, from going from being classic Loki, and then several years after eventually becoming this like younger adult version of Loki that looks similar to Tom Hiddleston. And it was this very steady change where, like, every few years something would happen. It went from like introducing Lady Loki, and then he, Siege happened, and then he became Kid Loki. And Kid Loki was around when Loki was already in the MCU, but then it was within the next like 2 years or so, eventually, when he went from kid to teenager to young adult. And then, like, now, I don't know if I haven't read more recently, but the most recent Loki story I read, he was an adult, like basically the same appearance, more or less, as Tom Hiddleston. And I think that was something that, like, it was such an easy and organic feeling change because the character
Yeah.
himself is known to be able to shapeshift,
Yes.
and it just happened so naturally that like there was um no issue. It wasn't clumsy. It didn't like
Mhm.
feel weird to see that happen. And it wound up making it to where now if you have these new fans who are interested in reading things with Loki, they can go pick up Loki, Agent of Asgard. And it's very easy to imagine that as, Tom Hiddleston, a little bit younger there, but still, like, it's easy to imagine that type of thing. I think that was a successful change, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then I know they've caught flack over the last few years for changing several characters, and this character is this character is that. I think Loki is one of those characters that works well because if you look at even the mythology of Loki, he was a trickster god,
Yeah.
and he was known for changing into male and female. That was within the character's traits, and it works. And I think that again, another instance where it just works because the character's mythology behind it actually backs that up in this case. And storyline wise, it's fun. There's been tons of iterations of Loki, and this is one of the last few years have been some of the most fun ones. I love the Agent of Asgard storyline. I think it's really good.
If someone though were to come to you knowing that you're a fan of the Peacemaker show and ask you about comics and stuff, where would you push them as far like if they want to read something that you feel would be in line kind of with Peacemaker? Because obviously you wouldn't tell them to pick up a Peacemaker comic
No, no.
or Vigilante, because Vigilante there does not act like I haven't read much Vigilante, but the little bit that I have, not the same at all.
Yeah. Um, so here's the thing with those characters. You can't they're relatively new, especially these iterations, so there hasn't been much work done with them. So I mean, you could point them to the Tom Taylor Suicide Squad run if they're itching for a Suicide Squad. Doesn't have to necessarily have Peacemaker. I would say pick up that Tom Taylor Suicide Squad run that was done about a year ago. It's only 10 issues. It's a
Yeah.
great run, and yes, for the most part it's not the characters that you know from the movies, but if you like the overall concept of the Suicide Squad, Tom Taylor's version is awesome. It's so much fun, and he nails what it means to be in the Suicide Squad. And you'll have characters like King Shark and things like that that they're not going to be the same characters from the movie, but I'm telling you, it's close enough.
I feel like if someone asked me about a vigilante comic, like I don't know why, but the first thing that comes to mind is Fool Killer
Okay,
from I don't know if you read the Max Bemis Fool Killer miniseries.
I haven't. No.
It's really good, but for some reason, like that's what's coming to mind. And I know a lot of people make the equivalency of like him being like Deadpool, and I think that's a really easy like parallel to make because he's he's the funny character on the show basically. But there's something different about like I feel like Vigilante is kind of cracked, and he's like you're laughing at him because he's so like just
He's hard to describe, to be honest
disconnected
with
from
you.
reality. Like he lives in his own world where I don't know how to explain why that's different from Deadpool, but like Deadpool is not stable,
Yeah.
and he's also a lot darker of a character.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go, Vi- James Gunn's Vigilante is really its own thing because
Yeah,
he's equal parts of. I don't want to say he's an idiot, but he kind of is an idiot. He's also like a serial killer. He doesn't have any emotions. It's his own. It's his own animal.
yeah, and that's I think why I lean towards talking about Fool Killer is because Fool Killer is the same type of way of like very dead set on like killing fools and who he deigns to be a fool. And it was especially like we've seen stuff mild spoilers for this week's episode, like when he's with the nurses and stuff, and he's like dead set that they have to die. Like that's the type of thing that you get from Fool Killer, is like he's like, this person has to die.
Yeah.
I have to kill them. I guess that's where I see that I also would recommend you read that
And
Fool
then
Killer run. It's really good.
and then
It's
2 minutes
short.
later, he's worrying about the tape on them, and he doesn't want them to get hurt by the tape.
Yeah. But it just, it would be easy for us to be able to say like, oh yeah, the current run of, you know, Peacemaker on the comics is definitely good, and you definitely like to pick that up. It's great to be able to give those recommendations. I was just, thinking about just that, like in this morning, thinking about someone, because I get asked all the time, like what recommendations I have for things based on what people like. And I guarantee next week I'm going to get people asking me like, hey, I really liked Peacemaker. Now that it's done, what comics should I read? And I have to be like, I don't know, man, Watchmen, because that's comedian is Peacemaker, so it's not the same.
But that's the difficult thing, is what we're seeing more and more is we're seeing the popular iterations of characters from Hollywood are becoming the characters in the comics. One character that it's kind of been the opposite, I want to say, has been Harley Quinn, because that Jimmy Palmiotti run has really influenced the last few years of what we've seen from Harley Quinn. They've basically turned her into their version of Deadpool, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the version that we've gotten in movies. Not to say that Harley Quinn wasn't always kind of kooky and all that other stuff, but
Well,
in
yeah.
the last few years, what we've seen is that shift of Harley Quinn moving more from Joker's side piece villain to her own individual character, who has a sense of more pathos and has a sense of who she is more as a character, and I really love that.
And her like direct uh basically direct adaptation and how she was in Birds of Prey. Like that movie took direct notes from that Palmiotti Connor run on how she is. I know Peacemaker is in that series, but as far as I've known, he doesn't act the way that John Cena's Peacemaker does.
No.
That's what I'm getting at, is like there's not what I'll get is someone will come up to me and ask me like, hey, if I want to read Peacemaker, is the current Suicide Squad run good to look at, because it has him right there, he's one of the main characters. And I'd be like, I haven't read it, but I would say, as far as I've heard, that's not the same character. You want something different. You're looking for something different, and if you read that, you're going to be disappointed in it because it's not that.
Yeah, totally.
But the show has been great. And I think it really, like, going back to just Gunn choosing his characters that he uses wisely, like choosing the ones that he really can go to town with. Like he can have a field day with how he utilizes them and what he makes them do, because they're not tethered to wide expectations. So like he can make Judo Master this tiny hot Cheeto eating dude, and it's fine. Like it doesn't really like set too many people off. Like there's going to be a few people who are, everyone has the fan, like, there's always the, Jess to Pharaoh lad for every character. But the point being, like, there's not a ton of people who are going to get really upset. But like I know that it applies to, like, there's something for everyone. Like for me, like if they did an Animal Man adaptation that was just completely off because like the person doing it just felt like making the character different,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be too happy about it. I did like the shorts that they had though with him, that where Weird Al played his voice, because they were short, they were comedic shorts. But if it was like they introduced Animal Man in, they haven't put him in Doom Patrol yet, have they? I haven't watched past the first season.
No, as far as I know, they haven't, and I think Animal Man's a good example actually, because Animal Man is weird, because there's been so many different iterations of Animal Man there's been kind of that kooky, kind of crazy character where he talks to animals and he's kind of goofy. But for the most part, the Animal Man character that I know is the Grant Morrison Animal Man, the kind of darker stuff that Jeff Lemire has done. So that type of stuff is more in line with what I know of the character.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious if they ever decided to bring Animal Man to live action, if they would tone it down, because for the most part, Animal Man is kind of, I don't even was it a horror book under Grant Morrison? Would you say it's a horror book under Grant Morrison's
Like,
watch? It
I
really
call
wasn't.
it existential drama before I call it horror, but like by the time it got to some of the later runs, like Jamie Delano, that's when it really turned into a horror series. Because there's like horrific things that happen to him, but it's more drama because you're watching his life unfold in a certain way, and it's very existential. Um, but I like that's the thing where like that character is not like he's not A-list, he's not even B-list. Like he's not appearing in anything right now as far as I'm aware. Like he's the prime character that like if they wanted to use him, I'm going to say if they wanted to use him for Doom Patrol because that would be the place that I could see him appearing. I feel like in that show they might kind of make him more comedic in nature.
Yeah.
And I would probably be upset. And it's one of those situations where like if I wasn't a huge fan of that character, I could just as easily be saying like, oh, it's fine, they can do whatever they want, just like I am for saying for characters like Peacemaker, Judo Master, Vigilante. So there's always someone, there's always a fan. And I like it just leads me to this like crossroads of like, when is this thing okay and when is this thing not okay to do?
Yeah.
It's not an easy question to answer. It's not an easy thing to consider, but like the majority of people are really enjoying this show and really enjoying this interpretation. And when that's true, I think, you really have to think for a second, like, why is that true?
Anyway, yeah, James Gunn, man. So I don't really get a chance to talk to you too much, but how have you been enjoying Peacemaker so far?
So the first thing I'm going to say is what I believe is a hot take, but it's not a big thing. It's a small thing, but it's just been on my mind so much lately that my wife, who doesn't watch it, I even mentioned it her. The song that they use in the previous episode, like the end of it, the monster or whatever, I fucking hated that song.
The episode that just aired today?
No, the one previous, the one where at the end the song's like monster. She's my favorite monster.
Yeah,
I hated that song, but for some reason, so many people are like, that song was so fire. He always knows like just the right track to use, and I'm like, that song sounds like some shit that played on Fuse TV when I was in high school that I would like press the mute button on for the next 4 minutes until the next song came on. So bad, like it's so just such a terrible song. And I told my wife like I could not get this out of my head because so many people were like, this is such a perfect song for this scene. And I was like, I have to play it for you. I have to play it for you. Like, you will agree with me. I guarantee it. And if you don't, then I am going to question so many things. And so I played it and she was like, oh God, what is this? But aside from that, like the show in general, I have been really digging. I was not crazy about it in the first episode. I watched the first episode and then I didn't watch the next couple until I think episode 4 came out is when I started watching more. The first episode just kind of didn't really vibe for me that much, but then like when I finally sat down and watched 2, 3, and 4, I like back to back to back. I couldn't get enough, and I was like, okay, I'm down on this. Like this is so good. It's just a lot of fun. It's just so much fun, and that's like you can tell the whole crew is having fun with this show. Like Gunn has had fun putting it together. The actors have had fun doing it. Like the just stupid freaking intro sequence and stuff. Like how much like did they have to laugh like with the choreography and putting that together and getting everyone to do that with a straight freaking face.
Okay, so the intro sequence is probably one of the best things that I personally have probably seen in the last 5 years. I absolutely love the intro sequence. And the thing is, this show is tailor-made for James Gunn. It's 100% everything that Gunn is into. If you've seen his stuff like Slither, if you've seen all of his stuff in the past, this is all the culmination of everything. And what I love so much about what James Gunn is doing here is that it seems like, for me at least, he was being held back isn't the right word. He was being kind of restricted at Marvel simply because they do have that, no, we're not doing rated R stuff because we're under the Disney banner. You can't really go and push the envelope that far. And that was great. He's done some really fun stuff. He revamped the Guardians of the Galaxy. We got 2 good movies from him. He's been consultant on a lot of the cosmic stuff over there at the MCU. But this to me feels more at home, where HBO and Warner Brothers has said, yeah, dude, do whatever the hell you want. We don't care. Like, if you want to have Peacemaker blowing people's heads off and stuff like that, you want them to fight stupid white supremacists, yeah, go for it, man. Yeah, kick their ass. I love it. I absolutely love it. My favorite scene this whole season was Vigilante in the prison fighting off about 4 or 5 white
Yes.
supremacists and saying tiki torch carrying. I loved it. I stood up and applauded. It was so goddamn good, dude.
His like segue into getting there was so perfect, because he like starts off like, you know, friendly conversation and then like pushes boom just immediately into like insults and then just freaking busting ass. And I was like, this is great.
It's
And I think
fantastic.
that was like the last episode when I was binging it. That was the last episode that was out, so that was one of the last things I saw, and I was like, yes. Thank you. This was so good.
Yeah, it's really cool. Vigilante. So I'll be honest, I know next to nothing of the character up until this show, and I love what they're doing with him this season. The thing is, and I noticed it for the time. I noticed it today. James Gunn really likes writing families. He likes writing these characters with these really rough upbringings and stuff like that, and kind of have
Yeah.
really a lot of family issues. And then later on throughout the movie or throughout the season, what he's doing is these people are discovering that they have a new family in these characters,
Right.
and they share kind of common damage. And it's really, really good stuff. I'm wondering if that's kind of his shtick, because we've seen it now with Guardians, and we're seeing it now with Peacemaker, and we've seen it now with Suicide Squad, where it's the family dynamic that he's bringing characters together, and they're discovering this new family with each other.
He has a thing with like really shitty dads, and so it makes me wonder, like, how is his dad? Like, is he taking that from somewhere?
Anytime I get a chance to see a white supremacist get beaten up, I'm all for it. So
Yeah, no, it's a good day. Like, when I realized what they were about to do in there, I was like, thank freaking God.
all right. So yeah, what else? What have you been reading, man?
I've been not reading like anything this week. I haven't gotten any reading done because I've been so busy with work, and when I'm working, like, I just put movies on in the background, and that's when I get a chance to watch stuff like Peacemaker and watch like Book of Boba Fett, which was not nearly as exciting. But because I hate myself, I don't know why or what like spawned my idea to do this, but I've decided to watch every Adam Sandler movie.
Why?
And
Why?
because I hate myself. It's but it's interesting. It's like the like depressed millennial in me wants to say like it's terrible, I don't want to kill myself, like have like that dry, dark sense of humor about it, but like it's a very interesting exercise to like I'm sure it is to go through anyone's filmography, but like to go through the filmography of someone who's like has such varied like sides of what he does, because you get like I'm one of the like not many people that was like very much not a fan of Uncut Gems, but like there's that version of him,
Right.
and then there's Billy Madison, but there's this nebulous version of him that like exists between the two, and that's the one that's really interesting. And what I found is like these last several movies that he's made on like Netflix that are available on there, it feels like he's trying to move away from being the old like 90s version of himself, the one like fresh off of SNL, and move away from that, but he's not going completely into the drama side like he was with Uncut Gems. And a lot of those movies, it's like this kind of weird in between where it's like a drama comedy almost, like he can't quite let go, but he's dragging himself down when he like pulls his friends and people into these movies with him, because it's like when he does that he's in like a comfort zone and he doesn't move away into the more dramatic area. But he's not letting himself have fun with it. And like, not to say that this is a good movie at all, but like a movie like Grown Ups, for instance, is stupid, but he's having fun. All the dudes are there having fun. But like, you look at something like fucking Ridiculous Six, someone needs to get shot for okaying that one.
Yeah.
And that one's not like the dramatic one, but like the movie, what was I watching? Sandy Wexler was one of the ones that's on Netflix, and it's like it could almost be a decent movie. It's like close to being a decent movie, but he drags in like Kevin James into it, and it's like this random like really slapsticky part of the movie with Kevin James involved. And then he drags in Rob Schneider, of course, because he's got to give Rob some work.
Jesus,
And freaking Rob Schneider, man, like plays these weird, like very racist caricatures of like in Ridiculous Six, he plays a Mexican person, and then in this one, I think he was supposed to be like an Indian person or something. I didn't pay enough attention, but I was like, he puts on a fake accent. I'm like, Rob, you're a Filipino Jew. Like you have two different like. If you want to be racist, choose one of those, dude. Like you can use one of those and like at least, but stay in your lane with that stuff. It's just it's interesting. It's interesting to see these things and like watch his filmography and see the way it's gone, and like I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of thoughts about this when I'm done with this little. I still have like 20 movies left though.
So I loved Uncut Gems, and I loved the 90s era of Adam Sandler. Stuff like I just got a text from work. Stuff like Happy Madison, uh, Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison. What were the other ones? It's just fire some off on me because I can't remember right now a few of them.
Those movies. So Happy Gilmore, frick, I was just talking with my wife about them. Billy Madison, Big Daddy.
Big Daddy was good. I really liked Big Daddy at that point.
Waterboy was a little bit later.
I liked Waterboy though.
I do too. That was my first one I saw of his in theaters. But Waterboy, and then but my favorite of all of his movies, hands down, and I like this is a great movie, or just plain out great movie, is what's it called? The Wedding Singer. the wedding singer is fantastic, and he has such a great like on-screen chemistry with Drew Barrymore that he brought back again in 51st Dates, which is not, you know, a great movie by any, you know, stretch of the imagination, but like it is a really solid Adam Sandler comedy movie. And he does really well with her. So I've kind of been, I have like a makeshift tier list that I put together just to, oh, did I accidentally close out? I might have accidentally closed out of it somewhere, but I had one and I like organized it because I was like, there are movies that I think are good, and then there are movies that I think are good because of my nostalgia. And a lot of them are because of that. And then there are the movies where I'm like, this one just like, I used to like it, but it didn't really age well. Like Little Nicky is not, that one's kind of hard to watch.
Little Nicky is fucking terrible.
It's hard to watch, man.
Little Nicky is one of those movies where you watch it and you regret ever watching it in the first fucking place. It's one of those things where you get about an hour into it and you just go, why am I still going through this? Another one was Monkey Bone. Do you remember Monkey Bone?
Brendan Fraser or
Brendan Fraser.
Ton?
That was Brendan Fraser.
Chris,
was Chris Kattan in that?
I'm doing the Googles because I don't. No, he wasn't. No, he was. I don't know what he did, but for some reason I knew he was in there. I don't even know that I've seen this whole movie though.
Yeah, there was an interesting stretch of time there where Brendan Fraser was the it guy for Hollywood, and then it just fell off. And he had a real rough go for a few years there. He really hurt himself because he used to do his own stunts, and he hurt himself really badly doing The Mummy 3. And there were a few things where he got blacklisted in Hollywood because he spoke out against some people. And it's really cool to see in the last few years kind of him return back. It really started a lot with Doom Patrol, where he plays a robot man. I forgot the guy's name.
Cliff.
Yeah, he plays Cliff. And it seems like from there, he's got a movie that's coming out where he's working with the director from Black Swan. He's gonna be Firefly in the new Batwoman movie. So him coming back into prominence in Hollywood for me, I absolutely love that because I was a huge Brendan Fraser guy. And if you go back, my wife and I, we sat down and we watched the Mummy movies probably about a year ago. And those movies still hold up, and they're really fun action adventure movies.
Yeah. Doom Patrol, hitting on that one again. Like that show, I've only watched the first season, but that is like the perfect example of a show where they didn't hold any punches with like embracing the comic book roots. And it has had people like interested in reading Doom Patrol comics because of the fact that they watched and enjoyed that show. And I think that like, it's just the people who enjoy that are a certain type of people.
Yeah.
Like, they're the ones that are going to enjoy reading these comics anyway. So like, I have a lot of people who are like, oh my God, I love the Doom Patrol show. What do I read? And I'm like, Grant Morrison, jump into the Morrison run. It is fantastic. It is really good stuff. And
what about Gerard Way though? Would you?
This is good too. I enjoy I don't enjoy it as much, but Gerard Way's is a really good like modern run to read if you want something good. Like, it's similar in style to Morrison's because it is also like surreal in a lot of ways, and he does use a lot of those same characters because he was inspired by Morrison's run to do a lot of the stuff that he's done with like Umbrella Academy. So I would also recommend that for fans of like the show and stuff. But it's something where like the changes that they've made in the Doom Patrol show are very like few and far between. Like, they're not huge and drastic changes to these characters. I know there are some, but like obviously they switch up storylines and stuff because you can't straight adapt stuff a lot of times, but it's so good. It's just so well handled.
Yeah, it's so the thing is with Doom Patrol is I remember when they first announced that they were going to do a Doom Patrol series on HBO Max. My big concern was Doom Patrol's a really weird fucking property. Like they go for it. Grant Morrison goes for it. If you're writing Doom Patrol,
Yeah.
it's a weird book by its nature. Will they be able to go as weird as they want? And I'll be damned if they didn't. They really went for it. I mean, I think the first season is all about a goat or something involving there's a goat that they have to go into, and it's like a magical gateway or something like that. And then you've got all these really weird characters. Again, it's a Grant Morrison thing. You've got all these really weird characters that nobody's really ever heard of or gave a flip about. But as the series goes on and as the season goes on, you grow to love a lot of these characters and you get their backstory and you get attached to them. And these are heroes that even they say these are heroes that really have no business being heroes. They're not your stereotypical superheroes. They don't have cool powers or anything like that. They're just weird. And that's what I love about it. And I think the show on HBO Max really captured that and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, there's no hesitation. Like they go full on. Like they even had Danny the Street and stuff in there. Like when I heard, because I didn't watch it until it was out on Blu-ray, and like even then I watched it like a while after it came out on Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I heard that they were using Danny the Street, I was like, that's all I need to hear. Like if I find out you're using Danny, like I know for a fact, like you've got a like transgender conscious living street. I'm here. I'm here for it. Like I know that you guys are doing the thing. You're doing the damn thing right now. But yeah, it's that like, and they haven't really done anything as far as like there's nothing that they had to synergize with the comics. That's the other thing is like you do something like that, they stay almost completely faithful. People who enjoy it are going to find something that, you know, they can read in the comics if they want to go back to comics and stuff. It's something that works so well. And there's a lot of characters that I think like, God, these are characters they really could have done whatever they wanted with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Anything, man. And like choosing to embrace that strangeness just really worked. Like freaking Flex Mentallo, man. Like they use Flex Mentallo.
They brought him on. Was that again? I'm behind, but was it last season?
It was in season 1 because I've seen him.
And Flex is a character that he was in creative hell for a while, right? Because of the rights. Was that what it was?
Yeah, that was really annoying because like he was basically ripped straight off of those Charles Atlas ads.
Mm-hmm.
And they could not publish the Flex Mentallo mini series, the 40-issue mini. And then it happened like within the past 10 years is when they finally were able to do so, and they published the deluxe edition of the four issues. I was so happy when that finally happened. But like they were able to publish the Doom Patrol by Morrison where he made his first appearance. They were able to do that. But it was just the miniseries itself was the issue.
Okay. You got one more plug in there? We're kind of rounding out the show.
I'm back.
Hey.
Let's do it. Chat, gang, everybody watching, this show has been brought to you by the fine folks at InStockTrades.com. Your home for all things collected editions, whether it's an omnibus, hardcover, manga, and so many other books that you can choose from. You get it all at InStockTrades.com. $50 or more gets you free shipping, daily deals. Recently, books were on discount for 60 to 65% off. You got to head on to InStock Trades to figure it out for yourselves how much you're saving. Nonetheless, great customer service and wonderful packaging at InStockTrades.com, the official sponsor of Omnibros Live here on the Omnibus Collectors Network. Cool. So what did we learn tonight?
Doom Patrol is great.
I was going to say something. I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Peacemaker is great.
I'm just laughing at certain people. That's all.
James Gunn is great. Female Thor is great.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah, everything is awesome. No, there's a lot of good stuff out there. I think we learned, like, kind of just not really learn anything, but took a glance at, like, when is it, when can these changes be okay in media, like in adaptations, and when are they done well? Like, how can they be done well in source material, like to shift things around, if you will. Like, we might not be crazy about seeing things shifted around in the source material to match the adaptations, but at the end of the day, like, if it works and it brings more people, and hopefully it does for like readers and stuff, then it's fine. It's fine.
There you go.
And also that I watch a lot of Adam Sandler movies.
I don't know why you put yourself through that, dude. I really
Hey,
don't.
next up is Nicolas Cage. So
okay, hold on.
That's gonna be.
You cannot leave that alone because Nicolas Cage is a damn national treasure.
That's a lot better.
You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage is a national treasure that we will not speak ill will about that man's name.
But this is like training wheels for a Nicolas Cage run, because Nicolas Cage has, like, I don't even know how many movies, but like probably 3 digits worth.
Are you starting off with 90s Cage, or are you going all the way back into the back catalog?
So with Sandler, I'm not rewatching anything. I just took a list of everything that I haven't seen, and then I went through, and like anything that's available streaming, I've gone through and watched in whatever order I feel like it. But Nicolas Cage, I might follow his career if I decide to go on to this.
Like, you gotta go. Okay, you gotta go the trifecta, right, from the 90s, which is arguably The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. That's arguably Cage's trifecta from the 90s. And then you could sprinkle a few other things in there, like Gone in 60 Seconds. I think Matchstick Men, was that 90s or was that 2000?
I think it was 2000, but that was a really good movie. I really loved that movie.
Yeah. Then
you have to add The Wicker Man in there too.
The Wicker Man needs to be in there. Shit. Okay. I'm making now. I'm trying to think how to navigate this this gauntlet of Cage. So you got to do The Wicker Man. You have to do Gone in 60 Seconds, because that's one of my favorites. I really love Gone in 60 Seconds. Do you throw in the National Treasure movies in there as well?
Oh, hell yeah.
Those are fun.
I rewatched the first one with my wife recently.
Yeah.
And same as you were saying with The Mummy, really holds up. Really fun.
So you're throwing the National Treasure movies. And I really love this new era of Nicolas Cage that we're in right now, where he has to pay his taxes back. And he's in a lot of debt. So he's picking up whatever the fuck he wants. And we're getting these really weird projects like Pig, Mandy, which I fucking love Mandy. What else? In the last few years, we've gotten Kick-Ass. He was great in Kick-Ass, for what that's worth. That new one that's coming out that he plays himself and he's hanging out with the Mandalorian on an island somewhere, it looks just fucking awesome.
That one's called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
I'm all in for that. I love it. I love it.
He also had that Jiu-Jitsu movie.
He also had Willy's Wonderland.
Prisoners of Ghostland. There's a lot.
Yeah, this dude has gotten around, and there's a lot of movies that I want to watch that I haven't watched. There's a lot of movies that I don't want to watch that I haven't watched, but if I choose to go on this mission, I'm gonna fucking do it.
What's funny about Cage is that he's done award-winning movies, terrible movies, comic book movies, animated movies, Weeb-related stuff with like Astro Boy, for example. So the man has a healthy catalog of just weirdness.
Did you ever see a few years ago? It was a documentary on that Superman movie that Nicolas Cage was supposed to be a part of.
I didn't watch it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, watch it. Because goddamn, if I didn't walk out of that documentary going, you know what, I kind of want to see this movie.
They should
Yeah,
continue.
I've seen all the
Maybe
photos.
as a comic or something.
I've seen the images of like drawings of what like Brainiac would look like and stuff, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, and I wish we had it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if that Superman got to team up with Batman back in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
Lord.
I'd be down for that. All right, man, let's wrap this up.
All right.
All right. Thank you to everybody watching. Leave your comments below what you thought of the topic and your suggestions as well. Omnibus Collector, Riley, where can people find you on the internet?
Find me on YouTube at the Omnibus Collector.
All right. And TikTok.
Yes, yeah, that
Very
is
important. Comics Guide, where can people find you?
Send your hate mail at comicsguide101 at gmail.com, where it'll just be shoved into a spam folder. Really, I don't care.
All right.
So you can do that.
And got a brief cameo from your boy here, Gio, at Week in Geekdom, talking about anime and manga on my channel if you want to check it out. Thank you to everybody watching. Stay safe. We'll be back next Monday with hauls, previews, reads, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching, guys.
Good night, everybody.